G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today, I'd like to talk about something a little bit serious and not so fun. In the background, you're going to be seeing some Horton 229 V3 footage, and this was taken a while ago, so do excuse me, and it's a little bit off topic. It's not entirely relevant to what we're going to talk about, because what we're going to talk about is the mouse. What do you mean? Well, if you have been paying attention to the War Thunder news and follow War Thunder on social media, that is Facebook, Twitter, VK, Instagram, you might as well chuck me a follow as well if you're into that sort of stuff. But for the most part, we're going to discuss why Gaijin has decided to remove the mouse. What do you mean by remove the mouse exactly? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to hide it from the tech tree. For anyone who hasn't started research on it, when patch 1.91 drops. I don't know why. The mouse is going with a couple of other German vehicles, and only German vehicles, which is kind of odd, but for the most part, we are seeing the Panther 2, the King Tiger 105, the Coelian, and the mouse being removed. I'd first of all like to bring up why other vehicles, such as the R2Y2 V2 and 3, haven't also been removed, because none of these vehicles existed at all. They're all Frankenstein projects, even the V1. The only version of the R2Y2 that existed was the R1Y1, which is essentially the R2Y2 V1, whatever that means, with prop engines. Other vehicles, such as, I guess, the Horton 229, as you see on screen, is a bit of a Frankenplane as well, because whilst the V3 did fly, as far as I'm aware, the current V3 model is using the V2 flight statistics and carries guns. The V3 had, I guess, space made in the fuselage for guns, but was never actually fitted with them. So, technically, this is about as real as the Sapphire Meteor, which also didn't exist with guns. The thing is, Gaijin has sort of seen a lack of consistency, if you will. Where is the consistency? If you're going to remove one, remove them all. But at the same time, these vehicles fill a critical role in some of the BRs. The Horton 229 is a critical 7.3, 7.7 level fighter. It's also a really good ground attacker in ground forces, despite being nerfed. It is still really, really good. Honestly, I think it could be rebuffed. It used to be a real pain in the ass because we didn't have radar SPAA. Now that we have radar SPAA, it's going to be more than doable. But there is a level of consistency that just isn't being shown in Gaijin. And this comes to show very clearly with exactly what the Horton 229, the R2Y2s, the Ho-Ri production. The Ho-Ri was never even built, let alone put into production. How can there be a production model? How can there was a mock-up, there was a wooden mock-up prototype, and they were thinking of fitting it with a couple of different guns, but they were also thinking of putting a 37 in the hull, as far as I'm aware. Like, what's the go there? There's not a whole lot of consistency with Gaijin, and this is what frustrates the player base. Often you can see certain things supposedly working, and then Gaijin tampers with it, as if there was a problem in the first place. And other times, there is a massive problem, for example, battle ratings, and the problem just doesn't get fixed, or isn't admitted to be fixed, or isn't admitted to being a problem at all, which is kind of concerning. Because Gaijin, at the end of the day, has a really good product here. And what we want the best for that product, meaning that we want to see a well-balanced, well-thought-out, clear, concise, consistent game. And that's one of the things that I think that's the main reason that the player base is so upset, to be honest. And I don't blame everyone. I'm upset. I don't want the mouse to be removed. I don't think the Panther 2 should be removed. And the other two, fine, you can remove them, because in the case of the Ostwind, the Coelian is being replaced with the Ostwind 2, and in the case of the King Tiger 105, it doesn't really fill a different role to the 88mm King Tiger and has similar penetration values, a faster reload, or the 88 one does. And I really don't see a massive difference. I see the potential to, I guess, have a second King Tiger, but at the same time, why would you have a second heavy tank? And on top of that, you kind of have the potential for two. You have the premium one, which obviously, if you're not paying for it, you can't get it. But if you're not, you've always got the Porsche one, or the pre-production one. It's, in a way, it's not a bad tank. And aside from the armor, it's susceptible to, I guess, 90mm and 85mm guns. But for the most part, it is still a King Tiger, and it will still die the same way. So, there's no real excuse to keep it in the tech tree anymore, especially considering that it was added to the game to be an opposition to the IS-4, and it served its purpose. It's not a historical vehicle, and hopefully one day we'll get the same with the Ho reproduction and the Horton 229 and everything else that is questionable in this tech tree. The thing is, however, with the tech tree, you have BRs. You have to have a fully decked out tech tree, otherwise it doesn't work. That's why we don't have, at the moment, a Czechoslovakian tank tree, and because they don't have planes, they don't have helicopters, they don't have ships, you can't flesh out the tech tree. However, with the Germans, you can. Of course, obviously. But you need to have consistent BRs everywhere. Everything needs to have something. There are several gaps in the German tree that are extremely worrying, to be honest. I am extremely concerned about them. The gaps between the Panzer IVs at 3.3 and 4.0, all the way up to 5.3 with the Tiger 1. That is too much. That's a huge gap. And that has been in the game ever since ground forces have been a thing. We need something. I'm pretty sure there was a prototype. There was a vehicle that looks like some sort of Panther cross Puma hybrid called the Leopard. And I think that could be added somewhere in between, perhaps. I don't know what its gun uses, but there are options. There's a Panzer IV prototype with a Panther hull. I think that could really work. I think there are certain levels in between that need to be addressed before people get all the way up to 5.3, and then they don't have a lineup. They don't have anything to go with their Tiger 1, and then they end up losing even more games. The same goes for 6.7. The nearest medium tank to 6.7 for the Germans is the Panther F, or the Panther A if you want to use that, because the Panther F is garbage. What you need is the Panther II in the tech tree, because the Panther II fills a gap that is much, much needed. It would be extremely sorely missed compared to the King Tiger 105, and I really, really don't think that the Panther II at this point should be removed. Of course it was a Franken tank. We all know that. It was never built, it was only conceived, and the plans never went through because you can't fit an 88 in a Schmalturm. That's obvious, and it goes without saying, but at the same time, we don't have a tank to fill up that battle rating space. I honestly don't know what could go at 6.7 exactly. Perhaps the RU-251's, I guess, brother, one of the Leopard prototypes. They fitted a Leo prototype with a 90mm gun. That being the same one on the RU-251. And I think that might actually be a decent 6.7 medium tank, 90mm gun. But at the same time, we have another issue. What about the mouse? The mouse is probably the biggest issue here. And the mouse is probably the weirdest one, and it is a symptom of the biggest problem in War Thunder, and that is the compression of battle ratings. Over the course of the game, the mouse... Oh, might I add that it is also a symptom of map design. Wow, would you look at that? The two issues that I brought up in my Fix the Game in 1.91 video happen to be the two issues that affect the mouse the most. Would you look at that? Why am I surprised? I must be a genius. I digress. The big issues facing the mouse are obviously BR compression and maps. What do I mean? Well, if you go too low, if you put the mouse at 7.3, it'll club, because imagine facing it in your Pershing, you would shit your pants and you would go home immediately. I wouldn't want to face the mouse every single game. Can you imagine getting on advanced to the right, jumping in your Pershing stock with an AP shell that doesn't do shit? You get on, you drive to the cap, you take the cap, oh, that's all nice and dandy. But then after you've taken the cap, what do? You push forward, and there are 10 mouse tanks, and oh no, what do I do there? I have to get into my CAS. I have to bomb the shit out of everyone. So instead of actually playing the tank, you end up just spamming CAS, because that's the only way that you can deal with the mouse. On the other hand, if it's up-tiered, it faces the T55AM1 and the fucking 120mm smoothbore. Wow. It faces the 105, the French one, that has easily the best penetration and the best APFSDS round for 105mm guns at its battle rating. What do? There's simply nothing that the mouse can do at that battle rating. And on top of that, the maps that it plays on for its battle rating are massive. Fulda in a mouse. You wouldn't want to play it because it would take you 10 minutes to get to the battle, and then you'll have an AMX 1390 come up next to you and blast you into hell, and that sits at 7.0. Good luck. It's just not feasible with large maps and compressed battle ratings. So what needs to be done for the mouse? I don't think removing it is the answer, because the mouse has a lot of value to the community. It's a meme tank, like I've said in my previous video on the mouse some months ago. It is only viable on certain maps because of that, and holds its meme status because of that. I think the mouse would be much better if the battle ratings were slightly decompressed, and by slightly I mean a lot. Imagine old top tier, like closed beta tanks top tier, as in, I guess, Jagdtiger, IS-4, IS-3, and then maybe throw in the M103 and the Conqueror. You could throw in the Vickers MBT and the Centurions. I think it would be kind of fun, and I think it would be really interesting. You could chuck the Centurions and the FV4202 slightly above the King Tiger production, and you could say put the Jagdtiger up a little bit because it's clearly better. You could put the T29 and the T34 ever so slightly above the King Tiger. You could then have a sort of, I guess, 7.0, 7.3, where it's more like the 6.7 matches that we're used to. And then you can throw stuff like the armored cars at 7.3, so that they don't have to face T3485s, although in some respects, throwing heat at a T3485 or a Sherman can actually kind of throw you off a little bit. But at the same time, allow these more advanced vehicles to really be in a spot where the matchmaker both favors them in a way and gives them a challenge. I think this is a much better solution in the long run, because at the end of the day, if every vehicle is competitive, then we have a well-balanced game. And by increasing the battle rating spread a little bit more, you can increase the competitiveness of vehicles. Obviously, this slows down queue time, but I think everyone would be happy to wait 1 minute instead of 30 seconds for a game at 6.7 or 7.7, where it is a lot more balanced. I think if you had, for example, King Tiger, you had Jagdtiger, you had Panther 2, you had Leopard prototypes, you had M46 Patton, T34 100, you had the T44 100, IS3s, IS4Ms, M103s at the very top. This would be hella fun. And then perhaps as you go into 8.3, you get the old 8.0s, like the Bradley, maybe Bradley at 8.3, the BMPs at 8.3, and then you finally get in at 9.0 to your premiums. And this would perfectly line up with the Sabres. It would also perfectly line up with the CAS meta. Now, I was discussing this a while ago, but I believe that the CAS needs to be a little bit stronger for its battle rating above the BRs of 7.0. So basically where the rank 6 SPAA are. What I think is that these vehicles should perhaps see faster vehicles, because the damage that they do just simply isn't enough to warrant taking them out. Imagine 16 HVARs, all you can do is hit AA and BMPs, and like, wow, who cares? Some nations don't have the CAS as well, and there are issues around that, but at the same time, increasing the battle rating spread is only going to benefit everyone else. And obviously, this goes without saying that helicopters would go up as well, because they are a much bigger threat. Speaking of helicopters, the mouse can actually see the AH-1G without much of an issue. In fact, it is only a 0.3 battle rating away from it. Nice. Imagine jumping into your mouse, running out of spawn, and there's an AH-1G spamming 300mm pen rockets at you from 2 kilometers. I wouldn't see that as fun, and I wouldn't want to play the mouse either. That's why you're not seeing any mouse footage here, because I just simply don't want to suffer. I played one game, I got surroundings of Volokholamsk, immediately went back to hangar and said, no, I'm not touching this again. Maybe the mouse can sit as a meme vehicle, and I don't think I would have a terrible problem with that. But at the same time, if every vehicle can be a little bit more competitive, then I think that's a massive win. I think keep the mouse in the game, and perhaps, if possible, increase the battle rating spread a little bit. Just a little bit, so that we have a lot more well-rounded matches. I think it would be much better for the game. I think it would be much better for the player base. And then on top of that, give the mouse, or at least give the mouse's battle rating, a lot more smaller maps. Reduce the instance of Fulda, increase the instances of town-based maps, which is where the mouse thrives. Like Poland, Eastern Europe. You could give him Mozdok even, so you can allow the Leopards to do their thing and the RU-251 to do their thing. I think we have, again, a real solution. If you agree with me, ladies and gentlemen, do, if you want, share the video, discuss it with your friends, and every time you bring up something like this, use the hashtag please consider. This is a hashtag that Mike Goes Boom made up, and I think it is a much better one to hashtag fix the game in 1.91. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully the mouse will stay in the game.